Hello and welcome to my channel. Before we get started, let me introduce myself. If you don't know who I am, my name is Cupic and I'm a multi-regional challenger player who's hit rank 1 in NA with a 66% win rate, rank 30 in Korea with a 72% win rate, and challenger in EU with a 74% win rate. Interested in leveling up your gameplay? Check out my Metafy if you're interested in getting one-on-one coaching. I'll list the examples of my coaching with Neace and Saber in the description below. Let's get started. APC stands for Ability Power Carry, which means playing a mage in the marksman role, so Botlane. In this video, we'll be going over why and when we should pick an APC over a traditional APC. APCs are normally a much higher win rate than traditional ADCs in solo queue and have a lot more agency during a game. You can control a lot of more factors which a traditional ADC cannot. For example, if an enemy bot lane is trying to dive you as Lux APC, you can one-shot the entire wave with E and R, allowing you to survive a dive that no other ADC could survive. Or if both supports are roaming, being able to one-shot the enemy ADC as a Syndra off landing one stun. With proper positioning as you cast your spells, it's either impossible or very difficult to punish. Generally, APCs are more useful than ADCs during the early and mid game and get outscaled when it comes to late. However, even if you get outscaled, late game mages have the potential to one-shot any squishy target, allowing you to fight a team fight as a 4v5, which normally means a one team fight. I'll be going over APC scaling specifically in the part of the guide where I address champions. Can anyone pick up APCs? Yes. Mages aren't the most difficult champion class to pick up, and it's pretty simple to pick up one and wave clear. This means mid and mage support players will have no difficulty playing APCs. Other roles can play APCs as well, but having some experience on mages makes the class a lot easier. I recommend playing Cassiopeia for ADC players and Talia for jungle players if you're looking for something to play when you get filled bot lane or require AP on your team. Can I play APCs every game? Sure, play what makes you happy. I hit rank 1 with it, so it's obviously viable. When should I play an APC? If you have an AD mid laner and AD jungle, it's ideal. However, even with AP mid and AP jungle, as long as you have either AD in the mid or jungle, you can draft an APC. If your comp has 4 more AP champions, I would recommend dodging, but APCs are strong, and if you enjoy playing it, you can play it and solely APC. You don't have to play AD champions. I rarely will pick an AD champ. Majority of my games, I'll just pick APCs and it'll work out fine. So all APCs run teleport. Being able to stay in lane and farm is restricted by your mana pool when you're playing a mage. So all mages bot lane will run teleport instead of a combat sum. However, that doesn't mean you can't win 2v2 fights even while being down a summoner spell. Focus on getting Lost Chapter and tier. Don't poke too much. Conserve your mana only to proc mana flow ban, or if they're really just taking too much poke and you can look for a kill. Another goal is to zone the enemy ADC with spells, chunking them so they're forced to recall, forcing them to recall on a bad wave and teleporting back to freeze the wave. And yeah. APCs are strong, yes, however they come with their own set of issues, namely dealing with tanks. Some can deal with this issue better than others. For example, Hwei has max HP damage on QQ, Cassiopeia has constant DPS, and Vel'Koz has true damage. In other cases, such as Lux and Seraphine, they can deal with tanks in different ways. Lux can secure her mid-game and late-game prio by ulting the wave and securing vision, as well having a great W that shields around 800 to 900 per teammate on both hits, which allows you to win the team fight by playing through your allies instead of looking to kill people. Seraphine, she has a lot of utility as well, so you can deal with tanks with her teammates' damage and keeping them alive. For example, if you have a fed Hecarim or fed Viego, you can just double W and watch him kill everything. It depends on your team comp though. For example, if you have like AP champions, obviously Seraphine's not going to be as great. So regardless of your own tools for dealing with tanks, it's normally very helpful to have a strong AD source on your team, such as Tristana, Yone, Viego, Hecarim, either in the jungle or mid lane. Majority of lanes, I will let them push into me. I want to hit level 2 or 3 before taking any fights. For most mages, I'll want to farm until I get Lost Chapter or tier. After that is where mages truly shine, shoving wave after wave into turret and poking them down with spells. With proper spacing, most ADCs won't even be able to land one hit on you as you trade from afar with your spells. However, during the laning phase, you always need to be careful with taking auto trades since ADCs will always win extended trades. Poke them down and commit for the all-in when they're low. Depending on the support and how fed you are at the time, you'll be able to all-in and one-shot them without them being able to fight back. Here, they're shoving into us after hitting level 2. The ASO positions himself too close to the wall and gets hit by a Poppy E at my Q. With them being chunked and put the wave pushing to us, our Neace looks for a level 2 gank. The ASO does a preemptive flash as he doesn't want to be slowed/CC'd, and I follow it with my E flash, and it's an easy kill. In this second example, the Jinx starts off with 50% HP and a horrible wave. I land an E and almost get the kill on her. She managed to just barely able to get out. However, I don't tilt over losing this kill, knowing that my wave state is really good and she's gonna lose a lot regardless of whether I kill her or not. This is the advantage that adds up and later allows me to kill her due to the experience lead that I get. When playing League, you always need to have a calm mind and understand that small leads make a difference. Even if a situation doesn't play out how you would want it to, focus on ways to benefit from it, such as if you force somebody's recall, force on pushing the wave, freezing the wave, or doing an objective. So there's always ways to get advantages, and even if a situation goes bad, think about how you're gonna make it good. When auto-attacking, every single champion is stuck in the animation for throwing their auto-attack out. When farming ADCs are stuck in this wind-up and animation, this is where you throw your spells out to hit them. However, not all spells will come out fast enough to punish this. For example, Hwei. He can punish an ADC going for farm with QQ, but if minions are blocking the way, his only options are QW and QE, both spells being too slow to punish an ADC's auto-attack animation. In this case, you would need to hit him with an EE QW. If you play the mages a lot, you'll know like what spells can punish ADC's farming and what spells can't. Syndra Q, Mel Q, and Lux E, they're all very fast skill shots that will be able to hit an ADC during their auto attack window. In rare cases, an ADC will cancel their auto attack to dodge your spell, but ADC players are really greedy and most of them will just take the poke instead of losing farm. In this example, I can tell that the Jhin wants to shove the wave, so I postured myself aggressively. I whiff my W and trade Q for E and get hit by his auto and Q. I know that in this matchup, Janna and Syndra versus a Bard and Jhin, I will never die, so I'm okay with trading like this so I can get first right gold as well as my passive stacks. In the second example, I get ulted by Bard and I know that the Jhin is going to walk up to me to try and hit me with a Q or an auto. Before the ult goes off, I QE him and then I sidestep his Jhin ulties while shifting my damage onto the Bard. I land 2 Qs, W, and then I finish him off with a 5-ball ulti. This showcases the concept of aiming skill shots when they're auto-attacking you, as I time my spells with all of Bard's autos, forcing him to get hit by all my spells. When the support leaves, it's very easy to dominate the ADC in a 1v1 situation. They can't auto you, so if you space properly, you can smack them up without any counterplay. However, specific ADCs will be able to fight you back if you give them the window, specifically Kai'Sa and Samira. If you aren't confident with being able to kill them or even chunk them out, you can farm safely under your turret with spells. Knowing this, you should place a poke them before forcing an all-in. For example, Lux against Jinx, I'm walking up, landing E auto, Q auto, R auto, and one-shotting her, or chunking her entire health bar and making her either recall or stay and die. Syndra APC can walk up and land Q when the enemy ADC looks to auto on you, hit the Q and then stun them, and then land W and Q into R. It will kill most ADCs or make them low enough to where they are forced to recall. I would say Syndra is the best at punishing an ADC alone due to the ease of landing her spells, specifically her stun. In this clip, I whiff both my E and W, but I'm still able to 1v1 the Kai'Sa, playing with the alcove and the fact that she loses vision on me multiple times. Being able to space an ADC with spells is key to winning against them in a 1v1 when supports lead bot lane. Mages have the benefit of being able to wave clear much faster than ADCs. You should use this to hard shove in some specific situations. For example, a dragon is spawning in the next 15 seconds and your jungle is looking to fight it, place a one-shot the bot wave and rotate for the dragon. If the enemy ADC went to mid or a grub fight, hard shut the wave and get plates, or teleport for grubs or give grubs and take plates. Whatever choice you choose, regardless of what's happening on the map, you should always remember to shove your lane before moving. You need to be mindful of how you shove the wave, since you don't want the wave to be frozen in a bad spot. If you're too low and you absolutely cannot contest waves, simply recall and teleport back and attempt to break the freeze from range. If the support and ADC are both in the bot lane and your support is roaming, in situations like this, you'll have to give up your wave and experience and gold, which kind of sucks, but like sometimes it happens. You just farm from range. In this clip, we see that my kindred wants to fight the dragon, so I shove my wave before rotating and arrive at the fight first. I zone the bush with EW and hit the Morgana with a QW when she gets hit by it. Morgana finds a binding onto my Bard, so I ult the Volley Bear and use QE. My QE is not a very good spell in this situation since the Bard uses his ulti, so my QE is a wasted spell. During this entire time, the Sivir continues autoing me and I almost die. I walk over to the kindred and I hold my spells waiting for her ult to end. I use QE in the path I want to walk, forcing them to be slowed if they choose to chase me, which they do. This allows me to EQ these Akali and Kite, as well as casting my double W so I can live for a bit longer. I snipe the Saber with QW and Victor is able to finish the kill easily, which allows this teamfight to be won. If you don't know what freezing is, it's when the wave is in a bad spot and the enemy champion is forced to recall, or they die in a bad spot. In most cases, this will mean that the wave is slowly pushing towards your tower. In these situations, I will teleport back and last hit the minions with autos, and even tank the minions so that the minions will crash at my turret. This maximizes the amount of golden experience that I can deny from the enemy, and I like to freeze whenever I can, either making them recall on low health and a wave in a bad spot, or if they die in a bad spot, I like to freeze. The weakness of freezing is not having priority, which is not normally an issue in solo queue because your jungles won't play around bot lane, but your jungle wants to invade or, play for dragon. You need to break your freeze and hard push and attend the fight. In this clip, I hold the wave and keep it near my turret, forcing the Senna to walk up, which allows for an easy 2v2 after she overextends on her auto trade. Normally, farming safely onto your spikes is the key to gaining an advantage as a mage bot lane. However, on instances where your support lands CC, you can follow up and sometimes look for kill angles. As I said before, all lanes aren't the best, so taking short trades and backing off until they're low enough to one-shot is key. Once you get comfortable with playing mages, solo killing ADCs become a piece of cake. Besides killing that enemy, you can get leads in tempo and the game by being able to shove waves and fast and securing vision. In this clip, we get our bases cancelled by a Jhin and Sera, and my dash flashes forward and hooks the Jhin, setting up the play for me perfectly. I follow with R into QE and kill the Seraph with a QEEE. You don't always have to play off your supports, but if your support lands a CC, you should try and get damage off of it because that's an advantage. In the second clip, I have an autofill support and I'm already 0-3. I know that if I want to win this game, I'm gonna need a lead. So I teleport after dying and chunk Varus with EE QW when he's looking for the auto attack on me, forcing him to be hit by my spells. Knowing my damage and that I can look for the kill here, I chase him, landing QQ. The second he turns to auto me, I land EE and confirm it into R. I wait for my R damage to pop before finishing him with QW, waiting for my extra execute damage and securing the shutdown. Vision makes playing mages very diddly. Being able to sit in a bush and throwing a binding at anyone approaching a bush that isn't warded. If you're fed, you'll one-shot anyone who decides to walk up blindly. Because of this, we always want to try to secure the mid prio in order to get the vision control afterwards. With most mages, you should be able to one-shot the wave with a spell or two and quickly rotate to the river and return when the next wave hits mid lane. After taking the enemy bot turret or losing your own, it's time to go into the mid lane and farm. I noticed a lot of players in lower elo will try to side lane and then move to the mid lane, but doing this isn't good because you ruin the lane assignments and confuse your teammates. When the mid game starts, you should look to go mid lane and sit in mid lane. If you can clear the way before the enemy, then ideally you and your teammates should be able to move into the jungle and get river control and vision in the jungle, specifically over objectives. However, be mindful of when the next wave is to arrive and always be there to match it and catch it. For example, in this clip, I can see a talon on the map in the bot side entering the jungle. However, instead of running into my jungle, I clear the wave first and then move into the jungle. Controlling the mid wave is something that allows you to make plays and move into the jungle with your team safely while the enemy is wasting time on catching the mid wave. Another clip showcasing of how important clearing the mid wave would be here. I shoved the wave in with QE, I cleared the wave first, and then Thresh looks for engage and burns flash for flash with the enemy ADC. I walk into the jungle and I look to control space. I use EW over the wall that zones them from that entry. This forces them to walk towards us through river. We have a control ward in this bush that prevents them from seeing us. They force their way through the river, placing a control ward of their own. However, I'm able to get a good chunk of damage onto Xin Zhao with my QQ into EQ. My Thresh, however, gets rooted by the Jhin. I can tell that the Xin Zhao was looking for an angle onto the Thresh, so I hit him with EER while he channels his W. This starts a team fight. Xin uses his R to prevent further engages as well as preventing my R damage. Jace overextends and we stun him with a TF gold card. I slow him with QE and I finish him off with EEQQ. I see Nico approaching with R and I space her R proto belt just barely. Afterwards, I walk forward and land QQEE on target's bunch up from the Kiana ulti. I then finish off the Nico with QQEE. This teamfight was won easily due to controlling the mid wave and fighting on vision. If we had to walk into Xerath, Jhin, Nico, and deal with Jace poke beforehand, the teamfight would be a lot harder. Even without vision, it's very easy to catch people off guard as a mage, and it's very rewarding. If you catch a squishy support or ADC off guard with a Lux binding, you'll either chunk them down and force them to recall, or kill them, both being very rewarding for the game state. Getting good at catching people is a big part of being able to play mages at a high level. Late game as a mage is all about team fighting. It's kind of hard to teach how to exactly team fight since every game and situation is different. But I would say mages can dominate the late game team fights with their zone control and proper positioning. I'll go more into team fighting with specific champions later in the guide, but generally you still want to control the mid wave and make sure your support can ward important objectives such as Baron or Soul or Elder. Vision is definitely key at this point of the game. In this example, I'm playing late game Mel. I focus on clearing the mid wave and zoning the Draven off the wave. After I clear the wave, I walk into river, checking the bush with my Q. We start Baron and I chunk the thresh with Q and E. I use my reflect in case he was going to use his Q on me. Fighting in this zone, I know that the Draven/Jarvan want to look to auto attack/engage. I throw out my E and root 2, one of them being the key target, which is the ADC. Sona follows up with her ulti and Draven dies without being able to offer any damage for his team. I miss my E as the Jarvan EQs away. I take the blast cone for a better angle and manage to root the Jarvan and execute it with my ult. After we run after the Fiora killing her, we end the game. The second example has my Gragas dying while attempting to steal a Baron. I know that since they got the Baron, they plan to recall and get Dragon Soul because they're on 3 dragons. I teleport mid wave, and since the mid wave is already shoved, I take the Scuttle Crab and I sit in a bush that's pink warded. With the Scuttle Crab's vision, we sit in a bush and one-shot the Hecarim because he walked in blindly. My Silas gets caught and I throw my root out at Darius to keep him in place since I know he's gonna look to run us down with Ghost and ulti reset. We run back and I cue the bush for vision and I hit Ahri, chunking her to 70% HP. I walk forward knowing that Ahri will attempt to charm me. I reflect her charm and I one-shot her. The Darius runs after me and I kite back. Realizing that I'm too far to hit, he shifts his attention to my Nautilus, trading 1-for-1 with him. Yasuo manages to find a tornado onto the Saber and pops her Guardian Angel. The Lulu dies from Yasuo's EQ. Yasuo ends up dying to Saber, but I manage to execute her with Q and E and then I end the game mid lane. I'll now be moving on to the champion portion of my guide. We'll be going over runes, skills, and combos. In the future, I'll be making more detailed guides on Metafy over my specific mages, and they'll be much more in-depth and thorough if that interests you. When I hit rank 1, Hwei was my highest win rate APC at 74% over 54 games. I also used him in Korea with a 75% win rate over 40 games. In my opinion, he's probably the strongest APC. He's a jack of all trades type character, being able to do everything pretty decently. He has great zone control, mana regeneration, huge AoE damage, great wave clear, and tank damage as well. On top of that, he is one of the best, if not the best CC in the game, being Fear. Fear is really broken due to being able to cancel majority of champion engages, something that binds and stuns can't do. Scaling, 8 out of 10. Best pairings, Nami, Leona, Poppy. Skills. We max Q, go W level second into maxing E. Passive, hitting 2 spells will create an explosion under them that deals damage after a second. QQ, this is your main poke spell and what you use to deal damage to tank since it does max % health damage. QW. This spell is used to snipe people since it does % missing health damage, increasing the damage on low targets. QE. Firing a trail of lava slows and damages for 2.5 seconds per lava pool. This spell is great for team fighting and your primary wave clear spell. WQ. Speeds up your allies and yourself on a trail. You use this when you're leaving base or if you need to run away or kite back or chase. Double W. Shields you and your teammates. Use this to help your teammates / your frontline absorb damage or if you're low HP and you need to survive. WE. Summons 3 blobs, restores mana, and deals damage and applies on spells and autos. EQ. Shoots a projectile that fears on hit. EW. Zones an area by placing a trap that roots targets that walk over it. Can be blocked if something is in front of the skill shot. EE. A claw that draws enemies to the middle and slows them. R. Sticks a blob to an enemy champion and explodes after 3 seconds. Stacking is slow every 0.25 seconds and dealing damage. In the first set, I go these items for max haste, relying on Liandry's for most of my damage. Hwei benefits from haste a lot, having access to 9 spells and being able to deal with almost any situation. Having haste allows you to proc more passive procs, be harder to catch, and have the highest uptiming on zoning. In the second set, if you prefer doing a bit more damage, having a bit less survivability, I would recommend this set. Switching out Zera's for Blackfire Torch. Game plan doesn't change building this, however you must be playing a bit safer due to not having the Sera shield to rely on. Start, Doran's Ring, and 2 potions. I play fairly safe for the first 3 levels, conceding my wave and letting them push. Once I hit level 3, I look for some bread and butter combos, such as QE into EE, chunking them slightly. If my support looks to all in before level 3, I'll poke with QQ or QE with WE, but I won't look for an all in. As a mage, you have to be careful not to spam too many spells. Once you run out of mana, you're forced to recall. Hwei doesn't have to worry about this as much due to having mana restore on his WE. However, you must make sure you pop all 3 of his blobs to make sure you don't waste any mana. WE into EE into QW. This combo is used if they're hiding behind minions and you can't get the angle for QQ. Sometimes you won't be able to WE beforehand since it'll be obvious that you're looking for a hit. EE, QQ, WE. A short chunk in lane when there's no minions blocking. EE, R, WE, R, pop, QW. This is your kill combo and from around 50% HP. Confirm the R by landing EE and finish with the execute damage from QW after the R pop. QE, EE, WE. This is your bread and butter combo, ideally hitting both the ADC and support, allowing you to proc double passive procs on both of them. This is also good for hitting the wave and catching them in it, allowing huge damage to the wave as well. Mel is an interesting mage. Most bot lane mages scale and have a strong mid to late game. However, Mel spikes hardest around early game, has an okay mid game, and falls off late game. She's my most played champion in Korea, with a 70% win rate when I hit challenger there. I think she's a champion that thrives in more early/aggressive servers, such as Korea and EU. However, I think she can still work in more passive servers depending on comp. When playing her APC, it's important to have somebody on the team that does consistent damage per second, since she does lack damage against tanks. Scaling, 6.5 out of 10. Early game, 10 out of 10. Best pairings, Alistar Pike Karma. Start Q, max E, QW. Passive. Mel stacks overwhelm on her abilities and autos refreshing on hit, storing damage per stat. If the stored amount exceeds the enemy's combined shields and health, they are executed. Additionally, each spell casts up to 3 additional projectiles on her auto attack. This caps at 9. This is how Mel is such a strong early game champion due to early 2v2 fights or 3v3 fights, heavily leaning in your favor since the execution is so strong early game. Q. Mel shoots out a bunch of mini missiles dealing damage per missile hit, and each applying a stack of her passive. The more points in this ability, the more missiles she shoots out. W. Reflects spells shot at her in a 0.75 time frame and grants her invulnerability. Also gains 30% decay movement speed. Using this spell correctly separates the good Mel players and the bad Mel players. Being able to react to even RE, R/charm and reflecting it made the difference between losing this fight and winning it. E. Fires an orb that roots and deals damage in the middle. If you don't hit the middle part, it slows around the area and deals very small chip damage. Mel's R. Deals damage to any target with overwhelm stacks, only castable on champions. If this spell is going to execute, then it will light up above them as well as the HUD below. However, if they shield or heal the damage, they can prevent execution. In this clip, after landing multiple rotations on the Shen, I flash forward. However, after A clicking when he enters the bush, I lose vision and auto a minion by accident. I continue to chase him and I miss my Q. I know at this point he has so many stacks that he will die soon, so I land my E AoE and bring his overwhelm stacks up to 60 and execute him at 550 HP. You should think of Mel's passive stack similar to Kalista E. The more stacks in someone, the better your chances are at killing them. I ran a burn build for Mel APC. I feel for like mid lane, you can afford to go burst items. However, as you are in the APC role, you need to have some damage against tanks. I like going this due to having high haste, which allows me to throw out multiple E's in a team fight and also lower my insanely high W cooldown. This build allows for some insane kiting potentials, such as in this clip where I kite Neferi and Zed with cosmic movement speeds mixed with Leandri's. Start, Doran Ring, and 2 potions. I play safe during the early levels, only engaging when my support lands in engage. Whenever a mana flow or comet is up, I'll try to look for a Q on the enemy ADC, stacking my mana flow band whenever it's up. Landing Mel E when they run into you is simple, just wait for them to auto you and then E them when they're stuck in their auto attack animation. Mel does insane damage early, and off any engage for your support, you should be able to execute them with EQ auto. Use W ideally on CC spells such as Varus R, Nico E, Lux Q. Q spam when they can't dodge stuck in their auto animation. W reflect into CC into E. E into Q into auto. Sometimes you won't go for the auto and only get the damage from E and Q and not be able to auto in order to not take damage from their auto attacks back. Q auto, E auto. Bread and butter combo on a target, ideally casted on a target CC'd by your support. My most played champion of all time, I have a 78% win rate on her when I hit rank 1 over 66 games. Lux is a very unique champion, being a mix of burst, zone control, and utility. Her R abilities is one of my favorite reasons to play her. Who doesn't like shooting out a giant laser beam every 20 seconds? The fact that she can do this makes Lux a very strong solo queue champion. Being able to clear the wave instantly and at such safety makes her very impressive. Like we talked about before, being able to get to mid to late game and get priority for your team and vision control is very powerful, and using her R to get priority is very simple. Simply ult the wave. Even if you don't have R for the fight, normally getting vision set up beforehand is more valuable than having your ulti. Also, with these specific runes and items, you should have your ult for fights even if you ulted the wave beforehand. Scaling, 8 out of 10. Best pairings, Pike, Poppy, and Pantheon. Start E, max E, Q into W. Passive. After landing a spell, mark enemies for 6 seconds. Auto attacks will detonate the mark, dealing magic damage. Lux ult also procs this mark. Q. Throws out a light binding, dealing magic damage and rooting the first 2 targets hit. W. Throws her wand, shielding allies and herself, and shields on return for the same amount. E. Throws a light zone that slows target inside, can detonate to deal magic damage, and slows for additional 1 second. This spell is great for poking as it sends out fast and most champions won't be able to dodge it. However, it shines as zone control and grants vision, allowing you to scout out areas mid to late game. Additionally, you can hold the zone and slow targets inside, allowing you to land an easy Q before popping the damage. R. Shoots out a laser beam, dealing magic damage in a straight line. In the first page, we have a traditional Lux build used for dealing with normal comps / UR solo AP. Horizon and Shadowflame can be built either second or last depending on if you prefer having stronger burst or more haste. This build, however, struggles with dealing with tanks, and in those cases we go the second build. In this page, we go more of a hybrid route, opting to deal with tanks through our carries. This build is good for supporting Viego, Hecarim, Yone, Tristana type characters. In this build, depending on our score, we'll go for early Magi's into Rabadon, raising our AP extremely high paired with our absolute focus and Gathering Storm. This allows our shield to get to around 400 per W hit, on both hit shielding 800 per person. Total for... I can't do the math, but it's a lot. It also has a 5-second cooldown. If you can't stack Magi's, instead build Horizon Rabadons into staff and finish with Crypt Bloom. This build allows us to play as a supportive type mage while still having respectable damage. If you guys have played old Seraphine, this build feels very similar. Start Dorm Ring and 2 potions. Farming until level 3, I poke whenever Comet / Mana Flow is up, getting my cheap shot and Comet damage off. Looking for all-ins is only possible if your support lands good engage. Sometimes, depending on your support, you can look for level 2 all-ins, such as Pike / Nautilus or Reverse Enchanters. When fighting early, you need to make sure you're weaving your auto attacks, which we'll go over in the combo section. Once level 6, you can ult off any binding. Doing this chunks the enemy ADC out and forces them into a bad position. On that note, if your wave is in a bad spot, you can also ult the wave to reset the wave state. Ulting waves on this champion is very common, and I do it over 10 times a game normally. Q auto, E auto, bread and butter combo. Q flash, auto, EE, R. Using this to catch enemies off guard and kill them if they're low enough. Q EE, R. One shot combo if you can't get close enough to auto. EE, R. One shot combo if you're trying to catch them off guard and are super confident in your aim and damage. Q E R E. Malignant. In this combo, you want to wait for the Malignant's magic resistant shred before popping your E. A shell of her former self, Seraphine is no longer a scaling mage. Seraphine is not very good anymore. She's not horrible and viable, but she's no longer strong. She's alright early game, being able to 2v2 with an engaged fort. Alright mid game due to redemption and her double W. However, she falls off late game unless she has a good comp, such as Hecarim, Viego, Nocturne, Yone type champions. Scaling, 7 out of 10. Best pairings, Nautilus, Nami, Pantheon. You start Q, and then E, you max Q, then WE. Passive. On every third spellcast, double cast an ability. Additionally, every spellcasted summon notes for allies nearby. Does barely any damage, but grants range per note summoned. Q. Throws out a high note that deals more damage depending on enemy champions missing a health. W. Shields. If double casted or cast while shielded, also heals for missing % health, as well as granting movement speed. E. Shoots out a heavy sound wave, slowing for 99%. If already slowed, roots, and if rooted or hard CC, then it will stun. R. Damage and charms in a straight line. Allies and enemies hit extend this hitbox, shooting out even further. Start Doran's Ring and 2 potions. Laning with Seraphine is pretty simple. Farm, and if your support lands engaged, then you can look to follow up, ideally with E into double Q. However, if you have an enchanter, you'll have to look for the opportunities in lane. If playing with a Nami, ideally you would want to fish for E hit while the enemy ADC is farming, and follow up with double Q when they're rooted from Nami's E, which makes your E root instead of slow. Seraphine early damage is actually pretty decent. You can surprise people easily with her execute damage. Having supports that can help you get them low is a big benefit. Pantheon and Pike type champions that can deal a bunch of early damage can lead to very easy leads. Be very careful about how much mana you expend, as Seraphine uses a lot of early game mana. On first base, I like to build a Fairy Charm and a Tear, as Fairy Charm makes Seraphine never go out of mana, basically like a blue buff. Since for Seraphine you'll be building Enchanter most of the time, make sure in every team fight, every single W casted is double W. If not, you'll not be gaining any value from building Enchanter. I see too many Seraphine players building towards Enchanter and not casting their double W. If you build Enchanter and don't cast double W, then there's no point of going Enchanter, since the heal is the main reason you build for double W in the first place. E auto Q Q auto bread and butter combo. EQQ if you can't follow up with an auto attack or hitting for max range. Flash E auto QQ auto. Flash engage combo useful for gank follow-ups or if they're low enough to kill. R flash E auto QQ auto. Flash engage combo useful for setting up team fights yourself. You can replace it with R flash Q into EE to CC them for longer. Syndra was the champion I played for majority of my EU West climb, hitting a 71% win rate with her over 41 games. She's an APC which excels at killing the enemy ADC. She does this with ease due to her R button, one-shotting most ADCs point and click. Her normal one-shot combo is hitting 1Q, then stunning them with E, spamming WQ on them and hitting them with 5-ball ult. Dealing with frontline isn't as bad as some of the other mages due to R execute and W true damage. Scaling, 9 out of 10. Best pairings, Pantheon Elise Poppy. Skills, Q max, W max into E. Passive, Side Splinters from hitting 2 spells, and leveling up grants 5 splinters. Getting a splinter restores mana as well, and you upgrade your spells at 40, 60, 80, 100, and 120 splinters. Using the triple tonic potion at level 9 grants 5 splinters. Q summons an orb that deals magic damage. Upgrading at 40 splinters grants your Q having additional charge, allowing you to Q twice. W. There's a minion, monster, or orb, slowing and dealing magic damage. Upgrade at 60 splinters grants true damage. E. Pushes back targets and deals magic damage. If this ability pushes an orb, all units hit are stunned. At 80 splinters, slows after hit and increases the spell's width. R. Deals damage per orb on the floor plus the 3 surrounding her. Because of this, you want to cast R after casting all the Qs you have. 100 stacks of splinters executes enemy champions under 15% health. At 120 splinters, you increase your total ability power by 15%. Early laning with Syndra is easy, casting your Q to farm for the first few levels without taking trades. Once you hit level 2, you can look for QE trades to proc first strike and get splinters. Syndra has no mana issue due to her passive, so if you can land skill shots, you are heavily rewarded. It's very hard to kill with early Syndra since her damage output isn't that crazy. It's better to wait for Q to evolve at 40 splinters to look for kills. Once you have 40 splinters, it's easy to solo kill / kill with support setup. QEWQR. Kill combo using your Q when they try to auto you guarantees landing E, which confirms into the rest of your combo. QEWQ. Poke combo. Early game poke, shorter version of the kill combo, but still highly effective at chunking out enemies. QEW. The main bread and butter poke you'll be getting pre 40 stacks. WQE. Early game poke. Landing W before Q and E can help land your stun. Q on the floor, and then EWQ. Laning combo. Stunning them with the ball on the floor can also be useful, as most people won't think about the ball being used as a zoning tool, as most Syndras use QE from the start and don't E a ball sitting on the floor. Make sure to pay attention to when the ball is about to expire when using this combo. I'll lastly list some APCs that I don't have too much knowledge on, so I won't be going over them in detail, but I'll be putting runes and builds for them if you're interested. Thank you for coming to my guide, and hope to see you next time. Make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you.